housing is showing some signs of improvement. Our next guest says headwinds remain for the industry. Excess supply, tight credit, and high unemployment are all weighing on the housing recovery. But there is one bright spot. New York City seems to be performing better than the rest of the nation. Joining us now is Tashjian, principal at Centurion Real Estate Investment. Thanks for joining us this morning, John. I know it's really early. But first of all, I kind of want to just get your overarching thesis on the housing market. We've gone through a lot in the past couple of years. Where would you say U.S. real estate is now? Are we out of the doldrums? Have we hit that bottom?
Well, I think we have. I think I said last time, we've hit the bottom, but people drown at the bottom. So let's remember that. Being at the bottom doesn't mean you bounce right back.
Okay.
I mean, the good news for real estate is 2009 is in our rearview mirror. And the farther it gets away, the better. The uncertainty, the systemic issues are in the past. 2010 really, I think, set the stage for us to begin to think about a recovery in 2011 and 2012. The things we look for, job growth, which is critical, interest rate, which is interest rates staying low, which is critical to the health of the real estate sector. Availability of capital still needs quite a bit of work, I think, and the ability for banks to work through foreclosures in a way that makes sense for them and a way that makes sense for homeowners is critical. And consumer confidence is really important. Confidence in real estate as an asset class and as an investment class going forward. So using real estate as an investment class, I mean, what would you tell me? Are there bright spots? Are there low spots? Where do I go and where do I walk away? Well, real estate is a very, very local game. And never has that been more true. People say, well, how's the real estate market? It's a little bit like saying, how's baseball? Where do you live? You know, if you live in San Francisco and you're a Giants fan, it was a great year. If you live in Seattle, maybe not so great. The same holds true for real estate. Okay. And New York City is certainly a bright spot within residential real estate, as opposed to, say, more difficult markets like Las Vegas or Miami. Some of these secondary markets, which had low barriers to entry, had huge construction. New York didn't have a lot of that. The inventory that was added in Manhattan was small. New York has better demand generators than others. We've seen about 25% of the jobs lost during the recession come back, which is over double the national average. And we've seen housing prices, which dropped, anywhere from 25 to 30%, come back, and we're, anywhere between 5 and 10% off of the highs that we saw before. So it's really come back quite a bit, and we continue to see strength. But it's funny because day to day things change. Nationwide and day-to-day they change in New York. And it really goes back to availability of capital and consumer sentiment.
John, it's Nick here in London. Good morning. Is what you're describing there not just simply a capital city phenomenon? Because we've seen it in Europe, whereby London is outperforming the rest of the United Kingdom, whereas Paris is substantially outperforming the rest of France. Isn't it just a capital city phenomenon, and it's global investors who are at the margin setting prices, and global investors go with what they're more familiar with, what they perceive to be more liquid and safest to attract? Is it not just the American housing market falling, I say falling is perhaps the wrong word, but coming under exactly the same influences that we are elsewhere in the world?
I think that's right. I think investors tend to, they're attracted to blue chip cities, blue chip properties. We see that on the commercial side too, where trophy properties are priced far different than maybe the building next door, which has a different tenant profile and is a different asset class, meaning a B or C property. A trophy property may trade at a multiple, and we've seen that sector of the commercial market take off. And it's the same in housing. Strong markets which attract business, which have their own demand generators, which have their own economies which are faring better than the national averages, are going to not only attract people globally in terms of investors, but also have the ability for price appreciation within their own local economies.
No, here in the UK, we talk. There's a lot of people talking about how weak the housing market fundamentals are, and on the supportive side, they talk about what there is a real shortage of, I guess, good family homes. What's the sort of the family demand like? How is that a driver?
Was that question?
Yeah, that's you. Yeah.
Well, I mean, in nationwide, we have I think a much larger issue with people being able to afford the homes they're in. We have a huge overhang of properties in foreclosure and properties that are headed toward foreclosure. And the interesting thing to see is how banks are going to handle that foreclosure process, or how they're going to be able to work things out with individual homeowners, much like they have on the commercial side. You know, on the commercial side, there was this whole banks and servicers were criticized for extend and pretend, or kicking the can down the road. You know, that just might work at the end of the day. And the question is, how are banks going to work with individual homeowners? Because until you clear that part of the market, until you clear that overhang, there's no opportunity for a housing recovery nationwide. I mean, you've got 25% of all homes being sold to investors. 30% of all homes that are being sold are distressed homes. First-time home ownership is back to a low. These are things that have to come into balance before we can see any kind of recovery.
Yeah, let's hope that they do soon. I'm tired of talking about housing as dragging us down. I'm done with it. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Well, thank you very much to John for joining us. He is the principal at Centurion Real Estate. Up next, Wall Street